I'm in.
Okay, so I'm going to hit the first one to answer.
Good evening, Tammy.
Good evening, Dr. Rob. We have questions. So for those of you joining, please put them in the Q&A. It makes it super handy for us. First question. My husband is 6 months sober, and I don't believe he is in recovery, but he is definitely better than he was sometimes. So I was starting to feel comfortable with some physical contact. So we started holding hands, but every time I do that, my husband tries to take it further, and I say, no, I don't want to have sex yet. Last night, he told me to not try to make any physical contact until I'm ready to have sex because it triggers his rejection wound and makes him want to act out. This makes me feel very sad and like he just wants to act out with me. Any thoughts would be appreciated. Thank you.
Do I have to use my nice words?
No, you do not. So hopefully there's no young people ever watching these, but anyway.
First of all, I don't think, talk about rejection wounds. If your spouse has been betrayed, you think he has rejection wounds?
No,
let me
he
tell
thinks
you,
he has rejection wounds. Yeah.
You can have rejection wounds. You have earned them. He, however, has not earned his rejection wounds. So let me say this in the kindest way possible. I work with a lot of spouses, and I think that you guys are incredibly compassionate and empathic. I wrote a number of books for you. However, in this case, I would tell him, if my physical contact leaves you feeling triggered, I think you should sleep somewhere else, like outside the door, preferably in the cold. In other words, who gives a rat's butt what he feels rejected all of that stuff doesn't matter. What matters is that he be respectful, that he say, look, how old is he? 17? Is he 17?
7.
He can say, I'm feeling aroused and I'd love to be with you further, but I respect, or in other words, so what if he gets aroused? Are you saying, I know I see some things I get aroused, doesn't mean I have to do it right away. And if you're a sex addict and you have to do it right away, then you have a lot of learning to do before you get aroused and have to act on it. So what your husband is telling you is, I barely started recovery. I can't even be around you without wanting to use you to have sex. And to that, I would say, you need to be somewhere else because clearly this is too hard for you and I'm much too loving to you. Actually, here's another one. Why did I get really mean to you? I can be a total biatch and you're just going to have to live with that because apparently my being close to you causes you so much pain. Believe me, he'll want you back in a nice way. So if I'm being sarcastic and raising the temperature here, it's because I just think what he's saying is ridiculous. And, he's rejecting you because he feels it. So Annie, I would really wonder about your first sentence, which is, my husband is 6 months sober. I don't believe is in recovery. Okay, you're either sober in recovery or you're not. I think that there's more going on here than you know about. And I think that there's a reason he doesn't want to have sex with you, or he does. There's something going on there. And to me, not in recovery means there's something going on there that he's not telling you and he's acting upon, and it makes you feel, how does it make you feel? Okay, here's a good other one. Tammy's nodding her head. Who cares what it makes him feel? How about I feel unwanted and undesired and used when you tell me not to hold your hand? We've been married for how many years and I can't even hold your frickin' hand? I think that I would be more interested in this case in how I'm feeling and what's going on with me and what his actions leave me feeling, as opposed to trying to do something to accommodate him. Anyway, that I had feelings about that one. Tammy?
Oh, I have feelings about this one. That makes me sad, and like he just wants to act out with me. Yes, and last night he told me to try not to make any physical contact until I'm ready to have sex because it triggers his rejection and makes him want to act out. So he gets to blame you for his wanting to act out. No. I can't say no. Yeah. So
you did.
To me, this, what I'm reading is, I don't know what he's, I think he's abstinent. I'm willing to give him that, but I don't know what he's doing for his program. I don't know what he's doing for, did he go call his sponsor and say, I'm feeling really triggered? What did he do rather than blame shift to you because you're the reason he wants to act out. If you don't give in and give him sex, we talk about this all the time. Nothing you can do or not do, causes an addict to act out. We all make our choices. So it is not your responsibility to give him sex so that he doesn't act out in another inappropriate way. I mean, like you said, I feel used and like he's acting out with me is probably pretty, trust your gut on that one. So.
And I want to say to you too, that I really respect how you're going about this because you're doing everything right. I want to start holding your hand, see how that feels. Maybe we could, give a massage. I mean, you're taking it in the right. We don't encourage having sex right away. We encourage you guys to have intimacy, not sexual intimacy, but emotional intimacy and some physical intimacy that does not involve intercourse or oral sex. Or what he's rejecting is the very thing that he needs to work on, which is tolerating intimacy and closeness without having to go have sex or run away. So what you're asking is very reasonable. I would kick his butt to therapy or tell him to go to some more meetings, and he'd definitely be sleeping other than in another place than my bed. But that's just my
Therapeutic
that's how it
separation,
makes me
even if
feel.
it's within the home. So yeah, we both had strong
Oh,
reactions to that.
no.
Thanks for asking. So, okay. Next question. I recently found out that I was a sex addict. Me and my wife have been separated for a month now. I have been going to therapy and definitely want to save my marriage. My wife of 7 years says she does not want to work things out. She does not want to seek help and does not want to learn about sex addiction. Is there a way for me to try and talk to her about it?
Why don't you start, Tammy? I have different thoughts about this one.
As a person in recovery, I really believe that all I can do is work on me. You stand zero chance of saving the marriage or doing anything if you don't work on you. So changing the focus of I want to save the marriage, I want to get her to understand and do what you need to do. It says, let's see, I have been going to therapy. Even if you're seeing an expert therapist like Dr. Rob, if that's all you're doing, it isn't going to cut it. We talk about all the time, that sex addiction isn't about sex. Any form of addiction isn't about that. It's about, numbing out and everything else. So, and it's a 24/7 issue. So I would encourage you, I'm glad you're here. Fabulous that you're here. But you doing the most you can, you can't do too much right now. You're very early in the process. We have on this, on the Seeking Integrity site, we have a work group, Sex Addiction 101. I would highly encourage you to participate in that. It's a 6-week course, 90 minutes a week, facilitated and guided. So you'll get the support and peer connection so that you will learn more about what sex addiction is and what it isn't. So I would encourage you to focus on you getting into and getting stable in recovery. And hopefully, maybe, she'll start seeing that you're actually changing. But she's so hurt right now. I mean, and I hear often from partners that are like, just get away from me, stay away. And, as they have time to process, and if they see a little difference, who knows, but you stand no chance if you don't really work on you. How's that?
Well, that's exactly what I would have said, Tammy, is, I understand completely wanting to focus on, can I have my family back? Can I make it work out? What can I say or do to make it better? And, you just don't have any control over all that. I mean, you can make your wishes known. I really hope that if you're in a place where we can work on this, I'd like to. But right now, I'm going to work on me, is what Tammy's saying. And then if she says, well, what about us? Then you can talk to her about you. The other thing, and I just, we've talked about this before, but it's not unusual for couples that have not been together a really long time. And no offense to 7 years, that's a long time. But couples who've been together 20, 30 years often say, well, there's no way we're going to separate. We have family, we have kids, we have church, we have money, we have, so many things tied up with each other. But at 6 or 7 years, especially if you don't have kids, and I don't know, we don't need to know, some spouses will say, I can see where this is heading. And I look back, I'm speaking of the spouse now, and I see how we've gotten along and I see how our relationship is. And this is my last straw. I mean, you don't know if this is one thing to be fixed or, and I'll say that why in a minute. I have so almost all the men who come through treatment as seeking integrity, their spouses write a letter. And it's about, what have I been through with you, and how have I experienced you, and what has our relationship been like? And it's amazing to me how many men in the room will say, I've heard every word of that before from her, but I never really heard it. And so I wonder how long she's been asking things of you, to be closer, to be more open, to help more, to whatever. But when we're acting out, we're like, oh, come on, I'm busy. And, it may just not be the sexual acting out that's pushed her over the edge. It may be years of having an unavailable spouse. So either way, I think it's your job to focus on you and let your needs be known, and then let go. There's nothing a spouse hates worse than being hounded into getting them where you want them, when you've been using them forever to hide behind. So it's her turn to have control. It's her turn to decide what goes and what's not. And you get to say, whatever you need, sweetheart, that's what you need. I also
And
read a book called Out of the Doghouse, which I would recommend having a look at for, hold on, I got this, Out of the Doghouse, a relationship saving guide for men caught cheating. I always have to get that right.
and the new workbook. I got copies of the new workbook. So
That's because we have a class.
I know we do have one of that, but here's the deal. I just recently found out I was a sex addict. Start with Sex Addiction 101. Please start with Sex Addiction 101. So the Out of the Doghouse is great too, but and one more little thing, if you go, okay, well, this marriage is over and I'm just going to keep going on my merry way, you will burn through the next 3 relationships. So you taking time now to take care of you and your addiction, it is meaningful for you, hopefully for her, but you've got no control over that, but you can work on you. Okay, next one. I'm the betrayed partner. Can you please explain, especially to the essays, how important it is a full and honest disclosure is to the betrayed partner, and how incredibly important, can't stress that enough, how important ongoing honesty, all caps, is. I need your words to explain how betrayed partners need this so desperately. Without honesty, nothing can heal.
Well, I don't think I could say it better than that. I think that was pretty well said. I will simply say this. How do I want to say this? When I read those spouses' letters that I was talking about that we read in treatment, you would think, and they really are the spouse saying, please read this to my husband in treatment, or boyfriend, whatever it is, so that he can hear how I feel and what's going on with me. And you would think that those letters would be 95%. You had sex with this person. You had sex with this person. The guys, and honestly, me to some degree, are always surprised that 10% of the letters are about sex. Literally. I mean, you write 2 pages, single spaced, and 10%, maybe 15. All the rest of it is, why won't you be honest with me? Why don't you just be open with me? Why can't we just have a meaningful relationship? This probably wouldn't have happened if we'd been talking to each other, or I even hear, and I would have helped you work through this if you had just let me know what's going on. The most destructive thing to relationship is lack of honesty. However, I want to work from the addict side. I'm going to play the addict now. I believe if I tell her everything, she's going to leave me. And in fact, if I tell her this thing that I think is such a big deal, that's the thing that's going to definitely make her leave, or whatever it is, and take the kids, and I'll never see her again. And so, what you're working up against is this belief system that we have. While you're saying honesty is the most important thing, we're saying to ourselves, if I tell her more, she says she wants honesty, but I think she really just wants to know more. And if I tell her what that is, maybe she'll leave me, maybe we won't work it out. So I'll just tell her part. Or what they don't understand is, when you find out, and you will, what's really going on, it's going to be really bad. Tammy and I do these consultations for 2 hours online with some couples. And I can't tell you how many wives have said, look, I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you look at porn. I don't care what it is, but I want to know what it is. I think that is the number one thing for sure. I don't know about Tammy, would say that every spouse wants, is just tell me what has been going on in my life with you. And I can decide my own fate and my own future if I just know what's going on, or even ours, if I just know what's going on. So that's as strong an explanation as I can give. That's what you asked for. Tammy, anything you want to add?
Just briefly, how important a full and honest therapeutic formal disclosure. I'm, please don't do this at home. This is not a DIY project. So being honest about, like, doing the check-in. We've shared the FANOS, FANOS, check-in, being honest with that stuff. But, the gory details, please make sure you're working with a qualified professional. But, I have heard too many disclosures that have gone badly because the addict has continued to lie or do partial truths. And as Dr. Rob said, the partners find out, and then you are so much worse off. And, but it's such a problem with the addiction that we perceive that, that we can hold on to this, that we can hang on to this, because if they find out, because we've been hiding things from ourselves, lying to ourselves as well for so long. So, but I'm with you. Honesty on all fronts is imperative. Don't even do a disclosure if you're not going to be honest. It's just, you'll make it worse. Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Sure.
No, I can't. Okay. Now I can.
Yeah, now I can.
Okay. Oh, okay. Next one. I've recently begun therapy for sex addiction compulsion. While looking for support, be it online or in-person support groups, how does one do so without alerting their spouse as to what they're doing? I don't want to have any half disclosures, and I'm not ready for disclosure. Thank you. That's an interesting question. Like, how do you get the help you need without telling your spouse, I'm getting help for sex addiction, because it's challenging. Thoughts?
Well, I think I don't know how much your spouse knows. So I'm not sure. So Tammy, I don't know whether the spouse knows anything at all.
Let's assume, that's what I'm kind of assuming, is that they are completely in the dark right now. And if I say I'm going to go to a sex addiction meeting, or if I'm looking for help online, they're going to go, why are you going to a sex addiction meeting? What is that? So,
Well, here's the good news. A lot of meetings are online, so you don't actually have to leave. Boy, that is a really tough question, because okay, so here's a thought. If they know what's going on,
she's completely in the dark. Yeah.
What do you think, Tammy? I mean, I have thoughts, but I'd love to hear your take on this, because this is a tough one.
I do believe in integrity, but I also don't believe in hurting partners. So I think at some point, going to a qualified therapist to have a bit of, like, I'm really struggling with some issues, I want to get some help. But the other thing, we've had a lot of clients come to treatment and they go, what do I tell my employer? And I said, COVID has been super helpful for that. I am really struggling with some personal issues and I need to get some support around that. I want to tell you more, not employers necessarily, but I want to tell you, with a spouse, so I want to tell you more, but I need to figure some things out for myself, now, and, so that I can do that. And when I have a better, handle on things. So that might be something that you could possibly use, is I need to do some personal work. I'm struggling with some issues. So what are your thoughts?
I really don't know the circumstances, and I agree. I don't want you to lie to your partner more, but at the same time, I don't want to do a half disclosure. I'm not ready for a disclosure. What I'm hearing you say is you don't want her to know anything and so I guess I don't know. I mean, this just doesn't feel right to me. The reason I think that Tammy and I are struggling is 99.9 times the spouse knows. And so it's not a surprise, oh, you're going to meetings or this and that. It's actually, by the time they come to us, they know something. So first of all, good for you for getting started on this process without having had the pressure of, well, I got to do this or I'm going to lose my marriage or whatever. But so that's why we're struggling, I think. I'm really an honesty kind of guy. So look, here's the thing. I'll just tell you this way. You're effed no matter what. Like, it's not whether you tell your spouse or not, it's what you've done. So I don't think it matters whether you're ready for disclosure or not. If you want to start working on this, go to a couple of meetings and then start talking to your spouse. I've been going to these meetings. I want you to know what it's about, what I'm dealing with. I know you're going to be angry. I know you're going to be hurt. I can't tell you the details, but I have a problem. I mean, I don't know a way around this. And when I said you're effed either way, it's that you can wait and she's going to have to find out, and that will be horrible. Or you can tell her now and she's going to find out, and that's going to be horrible. Like there's no win-win here. The If it were me, we have a saying at Seeking Integrity: tell the truth and tell it faster. And here's a way to think about it. If I were her, take yourself out of it. If I were her, would I want to know about this now based on what he's doing, or would I want to wait? My guess is, I think I could poll you spouses. 9 out of 10 of you would say, I want to know. I need to know what's going on in my life. So it feels to me like you're kind of you're not protecting her for sure, you're protecting yourself. And so when you say, I'm not ready for disclosure, but I think she is. And I'm not saying everything, but this is a major issue that's going on in your life. It's like you found out you had cancer on some level. And I don't think I would say to my spouse, I don't think I would say, until I find out what kind of treatment I need, I'm not going to tell my spouse, because they're going to be incredibly shocked. I think you just need to give her. So I would find the right therapist. And by the way, it's Tammy, Tami, at Seeking Integrity. Tammy's a 4-letter word. The reason that I'm telling you that is we make referrals all over the country, and Tammy and I have done this work in various formats, different people, for almost 20 years. So together in some ways, we've been separately doing this work. So rely on us, or rely on someone to find a really good professional and bring your wife in and have this discussion in front of someone else. I don't think it's something that I would take on alone. I wouldn't do it to my spouse alone and leave them sitting there, or running out of the house. So I think having someone else involved, I think getting started, someone said 100% of spouses would want to know right now. There you go. Your partner fits into every one of these folks, and every one of these folks said, how could you keep this from me? Exactly. It's not your secret to keep anymore. You share it, you need to tell her. And I am concerned about, here's another thought. As an addict, I will never be ready for disclosure. I will never, ever, ever. I'd like to avoid that the rest of my life. So not telling her is a really good excuse for not telling her tomorrow. And then the next day, well, and then I'm working on it. I'm getting really far ahead, and she'll never know because I'm not acting out anymore. So now I don't ever need to tell her. So it's just heading in a direction that would not make me feel comfortable. So Tammy, to you.
No, I'm going to leave that one right there. So, okay. Next question. I'm a female sex addict in therapy and 12-step meetings multiple times a week. While going through trauma work, do you have any advice for staying in recovery? I'm struggling a lot lately. We hear this often, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think so. There's a number of things here, but what I'll say is this: it can be a challenge, because what do we act out over? We act out over stress. We act out over anxiety. We act over feeling dysregulated inside. And guess what therapy and trauma work are, excuse me, oh my gosh, sorry, Tammy. Guess what therapy and trauma work are going to do? They are going to make you feel anxious and uncomfortable and build up pressure inside of you. So, my take on it is, until you have 6 months of sobriety or at least, and you're really tied into your program, it's not that you can't be in therapy and get that support, but I wouldn't start the trauma work. I think getting in trauma work means you are stable enough to be able to manage the difficulties and pain and hurt of that without returning to acting out. And I got to tell you that this is where residential treatment comes in. I mean, I know that you need women's program, and Tammy can certainly recommend one. But one of the reasons we see men coming in is because they can't get sober without dealing with their trauma, because they know it's right there. But when they start to deal with the trauma, they act out. And so they really need a safe place to work on both things without ending up out there somewhere. So my answer to you is, a safer environment, slow down. Your trauma is not going anywhere, I promise. And sometimes working through trauma, I think, is a lot about control in a good way. Like, I need to take a break from this. I can't talk about this right now, or this is overwhelming me, or being able to manage the intensity of the therapy is what you couldn't do when you were being traumatized. It just happened to you. Now you can say, could we slow down? Could we not talk about the day? So what I would do is have a conversation with my professional about me having more control over pacing. And I want them to respect that I'm really struggling with the acting out. And as much as we both want to work on that, I might need a little more just plain support. You're not the first person to run into this. Unfortunately, I think there are therapists who don't quite understand and they just plow right through. And then you end up, in a really bad place. So what you're writing makes perfect sense. I see it all the time. I think you need to slow down and really work on sobriety and touch in with your therapist for support, but try to get a different pace to the trauma work. By the way, I wanted to say something about trauma, and I know this from personal experience. I was in therapy. I'm laughing because I was in therapy forever, but I was in therapy sometime and I was hunting around for trauma issues. And my therapist said to me, Rob, it feels like you're looking for it. And when you find it and you understand it, then everything's going to be better, or you won't want to act out anymore. And she said, don't you understand there are 100 it's? There's this it and that it, and it's not just one thing that happens, it's a whole bunch of things that happen. And so I can get in touch with it without exploring it all, because it's not just one thing, it's going to be a whole bunch of things. And so, and it's not going anywhere, but it's never about finding it, working through it, and then being beyond it. You are it. And so it takes a lifetime of exploration. You're not in a hurry.
That was so helpful. Thank you for sharing that. Because I do think if people are looking for the one thing, and if they identify it, then they can work on that, and then they won't have to deal with any of this. And that's not reality for those of us in recovery. It's, like you said, it's all it, but it's what we do with it too. So, okay.
Well, and we can make a metaphor. Some people say, I want to lose weight, I just want to take a pill.
Yeah.
Well, no, you're gonna have to walk, you're gonna have to eat different, you can still take the pill, but you got a whole bunch of things you can do, need to do. It's not just that thing. And it's not going to by the way, you can do all the trauma work in the world, you're still going to want to act out. In case anyone is unclear about that, take it from someone who's done 25 years of trauma work and a lot of recovery. I still want to act out. I was saying to a friend, Skip was here, right? And we were going out, and I said, it's springtime and everyone looks beautiful. They're not wearing as many clothes, they're just jogging by. He said something like, oh, you're not supposed to think that, you're a sex addiction therapist. I'm like, I'm human, and I have those thoughts. And as an addict, I still feel them. It's not going away, but how I recognize it, what I understand it means, and what I do with it, all of that can change. But working on trauma doesn't mean the desire to act out is going to go away. You'll just have better choices to make.
Yeah. Well, and owning it, like I think that's been so important for me. I own it. I say something out loud. I can't just go, oh, well, I would not be in good recovery if I didn't, cleanse my brain. That's not real. So, okay. We've got questions. Dr. Rob and Tammy, I'm a gay male, 28 years young. I love it. And currently recovering PA, and currently in my first serious relationship. We love each other a lot and want to build a life together. But unfortunately, my boyfriend's mental health has had a negative impact on his ability to manage his life. He often calls off a lot from work and gets into arguments with people as a result, and is always on edge. As someone that currently goes to therapy, I have offered him the idea of going to therapy, but he doesn't think it will help, and things in his life are getting worse as a result of his mental health. Should I move in with him or hold off until he gets help?
Well, I had this client in group once. This is one of my favorite stories, actually. And someone asked her, someone in a group was saying, this is a mixed group, it wasn't a sex addiction group. But she was an addict. And someone was saying, because I don't do mixed groups, but at the time I was, many years ago. And some question was going around the group, but someone was saying, like, should I do this or shouldn't I do this? Like, I just can't decide. And she said, I've never forgotten, she said, when I'm thinking about something that is good for me or okay for me, I don't question it. Should I go for that walk, or should I have that bite to eat? Or I say, do I feel like it or not? But I don't say, is the right thing or the wrong thing for me to go to a walk? Or is it the right thing or wrong for me to call a friend? But when I'm questioning whether something's right or wrong, it usually is wrong. In other words, there's a part of me, when I start saying, is this good? Is this bad? And when you're talking about your future, you're questioning this, I would pay attention to that. I don't know if I can help you find the right words or the right actions, because I'm not in your relationship, but I know this, the relationship you have with this person is a relationship you're always going to have with this person. Things can get better, they can get worse, you can communicate better, you can be more open to each other, whatever that is, but the essence of who this person is who they are. and that's who you are. So if this man is someone who's willing to work on himself because you're important to him and he wants to have a better relationship with himself and his partner, I think you have to ask nicely and say, look, I'd like to really grow this relationship. I'm even thinking about moving in with you, but some of these issues that I'm seeing are making me, as you have here, so uncomfortable that I don't think I can. And I keep thinking you're going to get some help so we can move toward each other, but you don't. And ultimately, on some level, that message, if this is important to you that he get help and he's not listening or not doing it, he's making a choice. And there's one of two. He's either saying, oh, I can push this off because this guy's going to stay around me forever and he'll never leave, so I can do whatever I want. Or he's saying, you know, I don't want to look at this. I can't look at this and I'm willing to lose the relationship over it. But if you don't give him some kind of, it's not an ultimatum because it's not about what he does. It's about what you do. This is what I can live with and this is what I can't. I can't move in until I, you know, it's only not going to, and by the way, it's not going to get better because as he leans on you more and more and has you in his life more and more, it's going to get worse because then he has less things he has to do for himself. So yeah, I trust what you're feeling and what you're seeing, and I want you to trust it. Love is a wonderful thing, but it doesn't cure stuff like this. You actually have to do things about it. And I think it's sad that he's not, you know. The one thing you might consider is if he's willing to do some couples therapy or if you're in therapy. Sometimes a spouse or a partner be willing to go to your therapy. So you can say, you know what, I have a few issues going on. Would you come with me? And that might be a neutral place where you can talk about this without having to get him to go to therapy. He can stop in on yours. But ultimately, you know, how he wants to live his life is up to him. And no matter what you ask, it's up to him. But you need to be very clear. If he really gets to, I'm not going to do this, what are you going to do? You know, what are you going to do? Because just sitting around and saying, gee, I hope in a year from now, you're going to be you'll be 29 years young. By the way, Tammy, you and I get to say we are X years young, but someone who's
I
28
like
just
that.
is young.
Yeah,
You have to say anything about it.
But he's 28 and in recovery. And so my two things that I want to share with you are, you are someone who's working on improving yourself, and I commend that. You deserve to be with somebody who is also wants to continue to grow and learn. So that's one thought. The other thing is Gavin Sharp on sexandrelationshiphealing.com under the resource tab. There's a previously recorded December 3rd. I've shared this one a few times when I can remember exactly when it was done, but he did healthy boundaries for addicts. And one of the things that he mentioned in there is everybody needs and deserves to have healthy boundaries. We have to. So it isn't like you were saying, you know, this isn't punishment or anything. It's like, this is what we need to be healthy, functioning human beings. So I would encourage you to explore what are the healthy boundaries for you so that you can continue to thrive in your recovery.
Now, may I add something to that? I was in a relationship before I met my husband, and we were together about 4 years, and there were some issues that were probably not that dissimilar to yours. And I realized that we weren't going to be able to move forward until we dealt with them. But we went on and on. We went to the movie, we lived together, we had fun. But this was an issue about long-term being together. It wasn't about the good times or bad times we're having right now. And we got to therapy. When push came to shove, I said, it was an emotional thing. I said, can you show up for me in this area? This is important to me. And he said, no. And at that moment, I knew the relationship was over. And I was out in 2 months. And I grieved for a year because I really was in this relationship and I really wanted it to work. So what you're doing by not seeing how it's going to go with him is you're putting yourself in a situation where when he says the no, which is, you know, absolutely not, maybe, which is a year from now or 2 years ago, you're going to be so much further in, it's going to be that much harder. And especially if you move in together, you know, we easily make excuses for people. Well, he's so busy and this and that. When we live together, we can see what they're under. So I ask you to not cause yourself, as painful as it might be now, to sort of draw this line. It's going to be more painful in a year or two. Trust me, I've been there.
Next question. My SAPA husband keeps coming over to my house to use his computer for work. He is not in recovery and continues to blame my disinterest in him for his affairs and porn use. I am 6 months pregnant, and his presence when he comes near me triggers my trauma, and he won't respect my boundaries. Any suggestions for me to protect myself? I appreciate you both so much.
So Tammy, I have to take a moment out to go.
Yes, I'm gonna start on
back.
this one. You'll be right back. So, okay. So here's why is he coming to your house to use his computer for work? Wherever he's living, you take the computer with you. You do not need, if he doesn't have a computer, it's your computer, he can buy a new one. That would be part of you're not living together. Remember what we started off with at the beginning was there's nothing you can do or not do that will make him act out. His choosing to act this way is his choice. You having healthy boundaries for you, the last thing as a pregnant person you need is to have that, the trigger and the emotional. What do you need to do for you? If he refuses to be in recovery or even start the journey, then he doesn't need to come and use your computer. You can set the boundaries for when he can be around you, if at all. I understand you're pregnant, and I know it's more complicated than I'm making it sound, but you need to protect yourself, and that means physically and emotionally too. The more you can create that healthy boundary and healthy space for you. So there's been podcasts. So on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, Dr. Rob has done some podcasts on, healthy boundaries. Kristen Snowden has previously recorded. She's done a bunch on, healthy boundaries as well. We talk about it a lot on that. How do you set healthy boundaries? But, he does not need to come over to your house to use the computer for work. There's, if he doesn't have a computer, he can use the computer at the library. I don't know. There's lots of other options for you. So that would be possibly a boundary for me. So thoughts?
Yeah, I had one. Let me go back up for a second. Because we got a lot of questions in here.
Yes. And we've got a lot more unanswered. So,
well, I guess one of the things I was thinking was, why don't you just change the code on your computer, lock your computer, lock him out of your computer. The thing
lock
that I
him
heard,
out of the house. That's what I'm going like. Well,
really
he's coming over
hurt.
to use the house, So.
Well, that's the thing is like, why is he there? Because if I were you, my trauma would get triggered because I'd be feeling used. Like they didn't come over to see me or spend time with me. He came over to use the computer, which is what got us here in the first place. So I would, if it were me, I would write a little note and say, I've been realizing I'm very uncomfortable. And if you're coming over for us to do something together, depending on how you feel, I'm interested in having coffee, interested in going a walk, but if you're coming here to do anything other than that, then walk the dog, please don't bother. I mean, this is what Tammy said, it's a boundary. I don't want you here just to make it convenient for you. If it was convenient for us, you'd be living here. So, if you have a plan for us, if you have a desire to spend some time together, love to see it. Another thing to do would be, I'd only want to meet out, now that we're out, on this side of it, I only want to meet for coffee. I only want to meet at a restaurant. I only want to meet for a walk. I don't necessarily want you coming over at all. I think that's perfectly acceptable. And the worst thing would be if you said, I just want us to meet for us. And then he said, hold on, I want to go to the computer anyway. That's divorce material. So
even though you're pregnant. Yeah. Like, yeah.
Well,
I mean, he's not willing. It's unfortunate because what kind of a dad is he going to be to this, new little life, like I'm just coming over to use the computer, so I'm sorry.
Me too.
Okay, next question. We've been separated for 3.5 years, have not done couples counseling because my husband wanted to finish his disclosure and it took 2.5 years. He feels judged and labeled and is angry with his therapist that he can't be the new and improved man. We started couples counseling, or we're starting couples counseling next week, married 41 years. Any questions for me to ask? And how do we counsel when he is full of shame and still in his fantasy and masturbation?
Why don't you start, Tammy? I'm
I'm
I
going,
mean,
why are you doing couples counseling? He's not willing to show up in any kind of honesty. He's still angry and mad. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you see it differently, but
well,
I'm going, I don't see
I don't know what's
anything.
going. Sorry, Cammie, go ahead.
No, I don't see anything where he's looking to work on repairing the relationship. So hopefully you've been working with a qualified therapist for you to support, you've done disclosure. So hopefully you've been working with a qualified therapist to support you, but to me, it's like, I see somebody wanting to stomp their high chair and still have tantrums, not work on themselves and show up for you and the relationship. 41 years and you're still there, separated, but you're still there trying, and he's, mad and, pouting. So
I think I've done a couple of podcasts with Carol, haven't I, Tammy? I'm sure I have, and you can find them on Sex, Love. Sorry, we have so many different names.
It's on this website. You'll see the tab for podcasts.
Sex, Love, and Addiction.
And
I've done a
Addiction.
couple. And by the way, Carol's not just a coach; she's a licensed therapist for many years, master's level, and also has a CSAT. So she knows how to work with this population. She's written books for partners, as I recall. So
in other words, it's not her; it's him. So
right. And by the way, just because your spouse comes back and says, I don't like this therapist, and they're not doing a very good job, and doesn't mean that isn't true. That's true. They sometimes people lie. My therapist said this, and my therapist said that. Not necessarily true. But in any case, I don't understand the 2.5 years. What I don't understand.
It took him 2.5 years in order to get to disclosure. That is like, this is a person who's still in denial, and I don't believe he's actually even sober.
Well, first, let me answer the question. I would not start couples counseling. I don't see the point. Couples counseling is for two reasons: either help us separate or help us move together toward each other. Help us with separation, who's going to manage the kids, who's, all that, or help us grow together, like we've had this problem and these issues, and how do we go forward? What's the point of this counseling? This person isn't doing what they need to do, their job, their participation. Are you going to go to counseling and sit there and say, what? And what, you don't even have disclosure. So what are you even going to talk about? Anyway, your husband sounds like a whiny, annoying little boy who wants to have it his own way and is leaving you doubting yourself. And I just not sure why you want to be with this guy, to be honest with you. I mean, he's blaming his therapist. He's upset with you. He's looking in all the wrong directions. What he needs is a mirror. I kind of trust my gut, and I don't like this guy. I know you married him, but I don't like the way he's acting. This is a guy who could go to treatment. We would do a really good job challenging his thinking. I would make sure he got robbed. I have to let the dog out, Tammy. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. So I don't see the point in that unless it's to discuss how do we separate, because he's still in the high chair. Okay, next question.
But I want to say one more thing. I'm sorry. I wonder, are you sleeping in a bed together?
No, they're separated. They've been separated 3.5 years.
So. Are you having sex? What are you doing when you're together? By the way, 3.5 years, I have to say,
is a long
when
time.
I see couples that are separated more than 6 months to a year, I really wonder if they're going to make it. 3.5 years.
Are you
is a
happier
lifetime.
when you're living your life alone? Think about that. Are you filled with more joy? Do you feel more relief if you're just like more relaxed in your life? So, okay, next question.
And don't listen to your friends. Sorry. Listen to your therapist, listen to people in recovery, but your friends who live next door, oh, you should be with them. You should not be with them. Here's the thing about neighbors and friends, by the way, they're not you. Just to say this, folks, it's very easy to sit next door when your kids, your family, your life is going great, and look over and say, well, I don't think you should be together. They don't know. It's very easy for other people to make judgments about what's right or wrong for you, but they don't really know. And so just to say it, I would be careful about who you bring this up with. And I would make sure it is some kind of professional. This is tricky, but as I said, I don't like this guy, or I don't like how he's acting.
I'm sure he has some good. I'm sure it's buried underneath.
I like lots of people. I don't like lots of good people.
Yeah. So, okay. What would you say to a Chem Sex addict who is in denial that he needs help?
Well, I don't know that there's much you can do because chem sex addicts are so caught up in their heads and they're really, really, they may say this to you today and tomorrow they're in such a different place. Um, my response would be, I can't be around you until you get some help for this. And 9 times out of 10, I mean, this is why we have, in part, a program for sex and drugs, because there are very few places you can go to deal with this. And what I mean is, people come to us who've gone to a treatment center for drugs, and they really got the thing about the drugs, but they didn't get the sex thing. And so where they went for sex, who they were with for sex, how they thought about sex, brought the drugs right back into their lives. And so I would not just say that this person needs help. I would say they need the right kind of help with somebody who can manage all of this. And by the way, just going to see a therapist, not going to do it. I mean, this is really someone who should be in treatment or at least at a higher level of care. But Tammy, what would you, now, I don't know if this is a friend. I don't know if this is a coworker. I don't know if this is a
Yeah.
spouse. So what I would say would be different depending on the relationship. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I get these calls all the time, quite frankly,
Mm.
or people in denial. That there's a short window of opportunity usually when somebody's had a really bad, you know, um, like often they're coming off a
Oh.
3-day binge,
Mhm.
and they're like, I mean, I've had people who have been hospitalized, they're still alive. That's the good news. But you have a fleeting amount of time, to intervene. Like when they're desperate, it's like get signed up, get going, because otherwise it's like, oh, it isn't that bad. Denial, I think, is incredibly powerful, with addicts, but with chemsex, Dr. David does a great job of talking about, meth
He
and
wrote a
all of
book,
that.
wrote a
So
book about it.
yeah, and join his webinars on Wednesday nights. But I find those to be incredibly difficult because, the compulsion to use it and the denial of like, yeah, nope, I'm fine. Got to do that again is really challenging, but it breaks my heart because, I've got a couple of guys who I call them circling, and they're just not willing to give it up. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm afraid they're going to die from it. And I got no control over that, but it makes me sad. So,
I wanted to add to that, and I know this is true, Tammy, because you get calls for people who want to come into treatment and they're desperate. Oh my God, let's have my life. And I just spent 3 days doing this and I haven't slept and I haven't eaten. But a week later, they forgot all about treatment because they're doing the drugs again. And who needs treatment when you're in that space? So what Tammy
right.
means by a narrow window is that once there's some window between I stopped and I feel terrible about it and I want to start again, which can be fairly short, where this person, where you can get in there and make a difference. And neither of us mentioned interventions, but if you ever saw a TV show, this is a situation that could really be helped with intervention. And if you're close to them, and again, Tammy at Seeking Integrity, we know interventionists all over the country. This is what we do for a living. By the way, we don't get kickbacks when we refer a therapist or an interventionist. But if you really love someone, you're deeply involved with them, I would think about getting an interventionist. I also wanted to just briefly say about, I don't know if this is meth or what the chemical is, but one of the things that a lot of the men I work with, they forget that they're getting older. And you can, I'm not saying it's going to go well for you, but I know I've seen lots of 20, 30, even 40-year-olds who are doing drugs, have been doing drugs, whatever. But when you get to be 50 or late 40s or 60, you're going to die. Drugs, these kinds of drugs, and people who pair drugs and sex, they have heart attacks, they have strokes. Our bodies are not, my body, I cut my finger, it takes 3 days longer than it used to heal. So imagine what happens to our brains when we scramble them. So, I would worry about this person dying if they're older. And if not, I would think about how can I get an interventionist out there to kick their butt and help me figure this out.
Well, and it's high risk behavior, and whether it's meth or not, but meth is often, identified as the chem sex. So meth is not a naturally occurring substance. You are frying your brain every single time. And unfortunately, you don't get a pass in your 20s, 30s, and 40s either. It's like, I know
Mhm.
people that are dying in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. Like it doesn't, It doesn't matter. You don't even know what it's laced. It's so high risk behavior. You don't know what they're doing on their sexual encounters while they're out. I mean, high risk
Right.
behaviors. To me, terribly, that and alcohol. When people are using a lot of alcohol, the two that I have the greatest concern when they call are, the meth users and the alcohol, because both of them are such, challenging substances. So,
Can I tell a funny story about meth?
sure. Is there a
This is
funny story about
someone,
meth?
yes, this is someone we know who runs a treatment center out in the desert.
Mhm.
And this is someone who's been sober a while. They run treatment. They do really good work. Nice friend. I trained him, good guy. And he said when he was really active in meth, he was having a sex party, which meant that there were, 4 or 5 people over doing all kinds of things in all kinds of ways. No one was wearing whatever the heck they were doing. And he decided to do it in the garage. So this is a funny story. So people were tied up. People were like, it's all kinds of, horrible stuff on the drugs, whatever. And by accident, he pressed the door button.
Garage door opener.
And so the garage door opened, and one of his neighbors was coming by, swear to God, with the dog. And he looked up, hi, Joe. Guy's like hanging there, hey, Frank. And then, so that's true. That's a true story.
I believe that. So, yeah. And there's humor in that, but yeah, there's a lot of tragedy. So, okay. Ready for the next question?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Dr. Rob and Tammy, and thank you for your service. My wife and I have been married for 15 years this April, and I have been in active addiction for the vast majority of it. We are now in our second go of SAA, as I left the program and was cured for 9 years while I lied and hide. And thank you for putting that in quotes, because I don't know anybody
Cured.
who's recovered or cured.
Fixed.
Like a ham, I'm cured. I was discovered again in October of 2020 and have now been back in the program for the past year and a half. My question is, how do we deal with the worst of my acting out? Can some actions like those that would be illegal be too much to move past? I complete the steps in the step group, but I'm still working on step 9 and will continue to work in the program. But can that be enough?
I'm not sure I understand the question. How do we deal with? Does that mean talk about, disclose? What do you think that means exactly?
Well, to me, I'm like, okay, there's some illegal stuff. Some of my actions like those that would be illegal, can they be too much to move past? So it's so you did a step, 4th step. It's a searching and fearless moral inventory, and we don't go, oh, unless it's illegal or unless it's going to what. We put everything down. The extent of our recovery is based on our willingness to be, searching and fearless moral inventory.
Honest.
You deal with steps 8 and 9. There are some things, that work with your sponsor. I honestly think, you've been at this a long time. I love the 12 steps. I really do. I would find that not to be adequate enough to deal with. Well, I didn't. I went to individual and group therapy myself. I needed more. I went to treatment. I still, basically lived, in 12-step meetings for the first, bunch of. Anyway, so for me, I needed more. I love 12 steps. Just doing 12 steps, even with a step group, I don't know how often you're going. If you're going every day, that's good, but I'm glad you're here. But really, I would suggest working with a qualified therapist, to really get to some of those issues. But it's not too much. It's who we are. If you hide some of that stuff, that's going to be the stuff that you go, oh, I relapsed again. I'm sorry, but that's, you're still lying and hiding if you aren't, honest. So.
Well, I typed in while you were giving good information, Tammy, I typed into the chat for all of you, and I did type it to everyone. I'm pretty sure I got that right. Tammy's been helping me with
it.
And what I wrote was what we resist persists. You have to deal with this. I can't tell you. Many, it's not many. God, I'm talking to myself. What else is new? We run a treatment program with 8 or 9 guys at Seeking Integrity, and I can tell you, often 1 or 2 of them come up with something they did in the past that is illegal or they shouldn't have done it, hurt somebody, whatever that is, they don't get well until they talk about this. It is the thing that you said to yourself, I'm going to take this to my grave, that's going to set you back up for acting out. You have to, it's not even an option. You have to deal with it. However, I would not deal with this with a spouse until I really dealt with it in therapy and a sponsor. And because you have to have worked through and thought about how you're going to talk about this, I probably wouldn't do it without a therapist present. At some point, if you're working on this, you're going to have to do a disclosure. Disclosure means you're going to have to tell everything. I don't think there's a spouse here, not one, who would say, well, I want honesty except for the parts that are uncomfortable, or except for the parts that make you look bad, or except for the parts that are scary. They want everything. And, you have to do that. And if that means that you can't be around certain family, or you can't, I've had people quit their jobs because they were having a Me Too situation with someone at work. And what they realized in treatment, and they didn't get this until we sat down and talked about it, is they were going to lose their jobs. They were going to lose their reputation. Some they're going to lose their licenses. They were going to get sued in civil court. They were going to lose everything because Me Too, it's not something you want to mess with. But until we really put it out there, it didn't occur to them it was such a big deal. And I find that a lot in treatment, where someone will be going through a list of things and I have to stop and say, wait a minute, let's talk about that one, because for them, it's kind of just a thing on the list or something they'd rather push aside. So again, when you're asking a question, I think there's a reason. And I think you haven't reached your decision about this because you already know the answer and you don't want to know it. But of course, you have to talk about this and deal with this. One thing I would suggest is be careful. Find out what the laws are in your state. When you go to therapy, there are certain things that we have to report. So we have to legally protect children. We have to protect people from being physically harmed, like homicide. We have to protect people from suicide. There are states where I have, if someone's looking at child porn, I have to report it. So I would, find a very safe place to talk about this and I would want to know what the laws are for professionals in my state. Yeah.
I ditto with a formal therapeutic disclosure, and that is not something you're going to have a framework for, for your timeline and all of that from doing your fourth and fifth steps, but working with a qualified therapist and having your spouse working with a qualified support therapist so that you have a disclosure. And while Dr. Rob was saying, they want to know everything, it isn't the gory details. A formal therapeutic disclosure is a certain format, and it is concise, but it's it's the details without the gory details that can't be unheard or unseen in your brain. So I would recommend working with the right professionals to help guide you so that you can continue to live in recovery and there isn't another relapse and stuff. So okay, one more question.
And you have a tendency toward running away and hiding and lying because you said, I left the program, I was cured, all of that. So I would suggest that you are someone who would like to hide behind that fence again. And I don't think that's going to serve you. As you said, you're not going to be cured. Deal with it, deal with it and get it behind you. And you'll feel like a better person. I promise you. Let's answer the last one there, even though it's getting close.
Is it common for the sex addict to not want to stay in the marriage after D-Day?
Now, small d means that partners found out a bunch of stuff.
I'm thinking Discovery Day. So yeah.
Okay. So here's an example. I'm having an affair and I'm doing all kinds of other things too. And you found out, and that's my perfect excuse to leave. Now I don't have to talk about it. Now I can go off with my affair partner without feeling bad. You found out, you're angry, you're hurt, and I just run away from that. So sometimes somebody leaves after D-Day because they think, oh, phew, now there's a reason why they don't want to be in there, a reason why I can leave. And it isn't my acting out, it's how they're responding to, or how I get to respond. In other words, it's an opportunity to run away, is what I think, for whatever reason. So I'll tell you a little bit about therapy. Here's this therapy trick. One of the things they tell us, and it's absolutely true, is if there's a couple that are intending to, it's not unusual for a couple to come in a crisis and needing help. The reality is in that situation that one of them wants to leave and it's really hard for them to say it, or they don't know how to say it. So they come to therapy to get it out. And they're really not coming to work. One of them is coming to find a way out. And think about this, if you found out things I was doing to hurt you, I would think that if I loved you, I'd want to make it better. I'd want to be around. I'd want to clear it up. I'd want to support you. And somebody saying, I don't want to be in the marriage now that you found this out, I don't think they were going to be in the marriage anyway. That, or they're just so afraid of your anger that they're running away. But I have a feeling this person's running to somebody else. That's what I would think. And yeah, and I don't want to be with anyone who doesn't want to be with me, as painful as it is. So there you go.
Yeah, no, I unfortunately hear that kind of regularly, and it always feels like, I don't want to deal with me. I want to keep acting out. I want to do my thing, and and then I can blame you.
Right.
Yeah, like I'm gonna blame you because look what happened. So
Hey, Tammy, I wanted to tell you something before we
Yeah.
leave, which is I've really been thinking about this. Some people have told you talk fast sometimes. I don't know if you're aware of that. But one thing I think would be really helpful is I think that we should bring up the screen for how do you find our podcast? How do you find, because sometimes you say, oh, December 3rd, we did this thing, and you just go up there and it's amazing, but I don't even know where to look. And I think it would be great if we did a screen share sometime and said, here's where the podcasts are. Here's where this group by Troy Love is. No, we have to do it now because it's over time.
Yeah, but I can do this in like really, really fast. So watch this. I'll do a screen share because I think you're right. So.
Well, I didn't necessarily mean this minute, but
no,
that's okay.
But we're going to do it like right. So
okay.
Watch.
So
this
which
is on
site is
sex
this?
and relationship
Okay.
healing. Okay. Podcasts are all listed here. See, they're all listed. And
there we are, Tammy. Look, there we are.
Exactly.
Right in the
this is us. But then you can see podcasts for addicts, couples, partners, LGBTQ. All of those are there. When we have the online support, this is the list of all the stuff. And it says addicts,
free.
Partners.
These are the free.
Yeah, these are all
groups.
free things. So, and this is, so they're all listed here. So online support, or you can see the calendar by going here and you can click on, month, day. So this is the one I refer to a lot because this has software, 12 step. And then, just, keep going. It also has the previously recorded webinars. There they are. So you'll see all of those. But this is good. If you go to, this is another site. So this is the Seeking Integrity site. This is the treatment center. Yeah, this is the online work groups. But you'll also see on the resources, you'll see self-test. This is where you can go and see, this is the sex and porn addiction self-test. And then there's a substance abuse self-test. But all of the work groups, and we're going to change this page a little bit. We're working on it so it's a little cleaner. But, if you click through here, I mentioned the Sex Addiction 101. Well, there's Sex Addiction 101, Porn Addiction
Tammy,
101. Yes.
Click on resources for a second.
Yes.
So just click on loved ones of addicts, resources for loved ones of addicts. There. So this is a very simple page that just tells you how to get support. Here are the books you can read. Here are the support groups you can go to. If you're a partner, you don't have to go far. And again, I want to remind you, we're not selling anything here. There are things we sell for sure, classes and treatment, but this is all free. And I would say half of what we do is given away. So please go to the site, find stuff, learn things, whatever works for you. But we are offering these things at no charge, so take advantage of it.
Well, and you can toggle between the two sites. So if you go to the Seeking Integrity, at the bottom of the resource page is Sex and Relationship Healing, and it'll take you to the, to that site. So yeah, and if you hit the contact on either of those, guess what? You'll email me. Yeah, the email will come through. So, and I will do my best to answer them. So, yeah, that's a helpful. Great idea. So, yeah, thank you for that. So now we're way over time. So, yeah,
for our dogs.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, exactly. Bye, everybody. Come back next week.
Thanks for coming. See y'all.